What's going on, everybody? This is Adam Burke from BangTheBook.com, coming with a look at game 115-116 here in college football. The Washington Huskies, a 10-point road favorite, total of 65, against the Oregon State Beavers. Over at BangTheBook.com, we got a lot of good stuff for you here going on this week. We've got college basketball conference previews with some odds to win the conference. College football power ratings from myself that came out on Sunday night, Monday morning. We'll have Danny Vorgs' NFL power ratings that are coming out here on Wednesday night. Daily NHL picks from Parker Michaels. Tons of good stuff going on. We're covering all the sports markets that are happening at this point in the calendar year, and there are a lot of them. So make sure you head on over there and check that out. Also, make sure you check out Bang the Book Radio every Monday through Friday. Some of the hardest working and smartest people in the business join me for a couple of segments a day. It's a whole lot of fun, great listening, and of course, you can find it right here on our Bang the Book YouTube page to go along with all the other free pick video content that we've got. All right, game 115-116, Washington, Oregon State. Again, the Huskies, 10-point favorite, total of 65 here. There are a couple of 9.5s out there in the marketplace, and when you look at the current situation for the Washington Huskies, they've already lost 4 games in conference play. They're not going to get to the expectations that they placed on themselves coming into the season. You get the last 3 years here for this Washington team, the Rose Bowl, the Fiesta Bowl, the Peach Bowl, those are all pretty highly touted bowl games. They're not going to make one of those this year because they've already got 4 losses in conference play. So they're going to get one of the other bowl berths that are out there for the Pac-12. They're going to be playing in a lesser quality bowl game. You've got to wonder a little bit here about motivation for Washington the rest of the way. And I know Chris Peterson is an excellent head coach, but you really have to wonder. I mean, these are college kids. These are college students. They are a little bit fickle. They're a little bit temperamental. We know how that can be. Most of us went to college or are currently in college. So you know that it's been a disappointing season for the Washington Huskies, and you do wonder how they're going to close it out. On the other hand, you've got an Oregon State team here trying to make its first bowl appearance since 2013. So they've got a lot to play for here over their remaining games. They've got 4 wins. They got to get a couple more. We'll see if Jonathan Smith and his team can come away with the upset victory here in this one. Just like we talk about motivation for teams that pick up a 7th loss, again, you want to be looking for these situations. Teams that are going to fall well short of expectations. Teams that maybe are trying to reach new goals that they're not accustomed to going for. A lot of pressure on those teams that are trying to set some new program heights, whereas teams that have been there, done that, it's old hat for them. They're used to it. Teams that have been there, done that, and aren't going to do that this year, again, teams that you want to keep a very close eye on now that we're into the month of November. This is the smallest line in a head-to-head matchup since 2014 for this Washington and Oregon State series. Washington has won 7 in a row. They have covered 5 of 7 as well. Now, there are a couple different ways to look at this game. The first is what I just mentioned. For Washington, coming off of 2 very difficult losses to Utah and Oregon, how do they respond? How do they deal with the fact they've already lost 4 games? 8-4 is the ceiling for their regular season. They can't get to 10 wins. They can't get to a lot of the things that this program has gotten to on Chris Peterson's watch, and even before that with somebody like Steve Sarkisian. On the other hand, they're stepping down in class here. And while Oregon State is a great story being around a 500 team this year, they're not Utah. They're not Oregon. And we saw Oregon put a beat down on USC last week. I like the Trojans. A lot of people really like the Trojans in that game. Some things went wrong for USC early in that one. It wasn't as big of a blowout as the score would indicate, but still, Oregon, probably the class of the Pac-12 North here by a pretty large margin this season, and the same thing for Utah in the Pac-12 South. Oregon State is not on that level, and again, they've been very, very good, but this is a step down in class for Washington and maybe an opportunity for them to let out some frustrations. Can Oregon State outscore Washington? That's the big question in this one because Oregon State is not a strong defensive team, 90th in the country in yards per play allowed. Of course, the difference here for Washington this season is that their defense has really fallen off. And we thought this was a possibility coming into the season. They lost some NFL caliber talent, in particular in the secondary. The Huskies have allowed a lot of yards per play, are 53rd in the country, 5.7 yards per play allowed in conference play, which is very high for a team of this stature. Both of these teams about the same in yards per play on offense. And some pretty good quarterback play overall. Jake Luton, a 19-1 touchdown interception ratio for Oregon State here on the season. Jacob Easton is 20-5 in the touchdown interception ratio department, 10-4 in conference play, 7-2 here the last 2 weeks, and those 2 picks against Utah could have been the deciding factor in that game, to say the least. So both of these quarterbacks playing pretty well, and both of these defenses having their fair share of issues. Again, when you look at motivation questions for teams in the regular season, a lot of times those happen on the defensive side of the ball. You get some questionable efforts from the defenders. Offensively, everybody wants to put up numbers. Washington has put up some numbers here over the last 2 weeks in those losses to Oregon and Utah. So I do think this Washington offense is playing very, very well. Achman's running the football well. Easton's throwing the football well. Washington's been moving it. Oregon State's been moving it all year long. So my favorite play in this game is over 65. And it's very surprising to like an over in the mid-60s in a Washington game. But again, I think you can kind of question the defensive motivation level for Washington. And furthermore, you can ask yourself if it's in Chris Peterson's best interest to start playing some underclassmen here, because obviously the guys that replaced last year's departures are not getting the job done. That's a factor here in November as well for some of these teams. They may get a lot younger, either on the offensive side or on the defensive side. I think Washington could experiment a little bit here the rest of the way. I lean to Oregon State plus 10. My number is 11.5, but again, some questions about Washington's motivation. And look, Washington could just be the better team. Could come out here and blow out Oregon State. Wouldn't be a surprise at all. But give me the over 65 here in this game and the slight lean to the Oregon State side plus the 10. I'm Adam Burke for BangTheBook.com.